In our headlines on this Thursday afternoon, June 15th, here in South Korea. Policymakers at the US Federal Reserve vote to pause their aggressive monetary policy, leaving rates at 5% to 5.25% for now, after 10 straight sessions of rate hikes over a course of 15 months, to crack down on inflation that hit a 40-year high of 9.1% last June. Meanwhile, on the local front, the value of Korea's exports of automobiles hit a high of $6.2 billion in the month of May, driven forth by the global demand for the country's eco-friendly cars that soared 64% on year. And as part of efforts to address public concerns, starting today, the South Korean government holds a daily briefing on Japan's upcoming plan to discharge radioactive wastewater from its crippled Fukushima nuclear power plant into the Pacific Ocean. We start over in the US, where the Federal Reserve has decided to hold rates steady for the first time in well over a year, but has also left the door wide open for future hikes within this year. Our Moon Hye-ryun reports.
The US Central Bank has kept its interest rates unchanged for the first time in 15 months, but says more rate hikes are likely before the end of the year. Following the Federal Monetary Open Committee's two-day meeting, it issued a unanimous statement on Wednesday that rate hikes would be paused at the 5 to 5.25% range while the economic situation is assessed. This freeze follows 10 consecutive rate hikes as the Fed aggressively responded to the worst inflation the United States has seen in 40 years.
Looking ahead, nearly all committee participants view it as likely that some further rate increases will be appropriate this year to bring inflation down to 2% over time.
Fed officials say that further hikes are likely to bring interest rates to the 5.5 to 5.75% range before the end of 2023. Despite more rate increases, Fed officials cast a more optimistic view of the economy, but say curbing inflation takes longer in a robust economy. The economic growth outlook for this year more than doubled to 1%, up from 0.4%, while the unemployment rate is projected to rise to 4.1%, which is lower than March's estimate of 4.5%. In May, the Consumer Price Index climbed 4% on year, which was the lowest annual rise in over 2 years. However, excluding volatile food and energy prices, the core inflation rate remained well above the Fed's target of 2%.
So I think if you look at core PCE inflation overall, look at it over the last 6 months, you're just not seeing a lot of progress. It's running at a level, over 4.5%, far above our target, and not really, moving down.
Personal consumption expenditure, which measures price changes of consumer goods and services, rose 4.4% on year in April. The Fed's earlier prediction back in March that PCE would see an on-year rise of 3.6% at the end of the year has been raised to 3.9% in reflection of the latest data. US stocks pinballed following the announcement, with investors bracing for another interest hike later this year. Moon Hye-ryun, Arirang News.
And to raise or not to raise interest rates, that is the question for the Bank of Korea as it weighs its options, taking into account the US Federal Reserve's future course of action and the status quo on the domestic economic front. Our Finance Ministry correspondent Arirang explains.
Concerns are rising as the interest rate difference between South Korea and the US may expand as the US signaled more increases later this year. With the Fed's decision to keep the base rate unchanged for now, the rate difference stays at 1.75 percentage points, an all-time high gap. However, with Fed officials revealing that rate hikes totaling 0.5 percentage points between now and the end of the year, the gap is expected to surpass 2 percentage points, even up to 2.25 percentage points, if South Korea's central bank continues to freeze the rate. This could spell crisis for South Korea, with a weaker won against the US dollar possible and with foreign capital outflow. Now it's up to the Bank of Korea to focus on taming anxiety by freezing the rate or increasing the base rate to prevent any uncertainties resulting from an exchange rate crisis. The head of the Bank of Korea, Lee Chang-yong, said previously that Korea will not mechanically respond to a rate difference, adding that more rate hikes may come in the near future. However, economic conditions in South Korea are making it difficult to raise base rates. The GDP growth rate in the first quarter of this year barely avoided a negative figure, while the trade deficit has been in the red for the 15 straight months. The BOK also already lowered its economic growth outlook from 1.6% to 1.4% amid China's weaker-than-expected reopening and the sluggish recovery of the chip sector. Meanwhile, South Korea's Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho said during a meeting on Thursday that a rate freeze by the Fed was already expected by the market and the government.
Uncertainties remain as to how major countries will decide on their monetary policies. The government will keep watching for any uncertainties and closely monitor the market and strengthen the management of vulnerable sectors.
During the meeting, Chu also pledged to thoroughly manage the potential risk of project financing in real estate, as more rate hikes could trigger a crisis for non-banking financial companies as well as a complete financial crisis. He said related institutes are cooperating to monitor project financing firms around the clock. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
And the government and a number of local banks have been working together to design savings products that suit the needs of the youth here. Well, as part of such efforts, starting today, they're offering a savings account with a maximum annual percentage yield of 6%. Our Lee Soo-jin has details.
A much-anticipated South Korean government-backed bank savings program, first announced in March this year to help youths gain economic stability, is now open. According to the Financial Services Commission, 11 banks, including Nonghyup, Shinhan, Uri, and Hana, began accepting applications for the Youth Leap account at 9 a.m. Thursday. With the Youth Leap account, users can save up to 50 million won, or around $39,000 over the course of 5 years, with a maximum deposit of 700,000 won per month. The government will make contributions depending on the amount deposited and the account holder's personal income. Those contributions could be as much as 24,000 won per month, while the interest gained is tax-free. All 11 banks said Wednesday they would offer a maximum annual deposit interest rate of 6%, including fixed base rates and preferential interest rates. Those aged between 19 and 34 with a total annual income of 60 million or less and a household income below 180% of the median income are eligible. For two-person households, the monthly income must be 6.22 million won or below. For three-person households, income is capped at 7.98 million won. Foreign nationals living in Korea that meet the requirements can also register and receive tax-free interest income, but will not be able to receive government contributions. Those eligible can apply through their banking apps between 9 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
The value of Korea's auto exports totaled $6.2 billion last month. Now, this is reportedly a record high for the month of May, and the third month in a row that the value of auto exports has surpassed the $6 billion mark. Seoul's Trade Ministry is linking the latest stellar performance to sales of eco-friendly cars, whose value hit $2.1 billion, soaring 64% on year. Auto production last month also rose over 24%, with more than 380,000 units rebounding to pre-COVID levels amid the steady supply of chips for cars. Starting today, the government is holding daily briefings on Japan's plan to release into the Pacific Ocean its Fukushima radioactive wastewater. The aim is to allay public concerns and advance information accuracy. Addressing the press earlier on this Thursday, First Deputy Chief of the Office for Government Policy Coordination, Park Koo-yeon, said authorities here are now monitoring Tokyo's 2-week trial operation, which began back on Monday. Separately, Vice Fisheries Minister Song Sang-geun stressed there had been no significant changes in radioactivity levels in Korea's coastal waters following the Fukushima nuclear plant disaster, and that Korea's fishery products are safe to consume. Meanwhile, at the National Assembly back on Wednesday, clashes over Japan's radioactive wastewater continued, but consensus was shared over the need for policies in support of the country's disabled. Our correspondent Lee Si-hoo reports.
Rival lawmakers grilled government officials on issues directly pertaining to South Koreans' lives, and among them was the People Power Party's Kim Ye-ji.
A person with a disability myself and also a list member. I'm going to ask questions on the government's role and direction regarding policies for the disabled.
Kim asked Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, representing the government at the parliamentary session, about the Yoon administration's direction and plans for policies for the disabled.
We are working hard to increase the related budget. We are also working on expanding support for the disabled's health, care, and personal budget system. We will actively communicate with those with disabilities to carry out our assignments and develop various policy alternatives.
And as was the case in the previous two sessions of questioning, another hot topic was Japan's plan to release wastewater from the destroyed Fukushima nuclear power plant.
Japan has chosen the cheapest and easiest way to make up for the nuclear plant disaster. I think this will set a bad example globally. What do you think?
If it's done in a non-scientific way that harms the people around the world, there are international systems to discuss and file complaints, for example, through the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea.
Other questions asked involved the government's aftercare for those affected by the Itaewon tragedy late last year and the need for the protection of press freedom. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
South Korea will respond to North Korea's provocations without a moment's hesitation. This is according to President Yoon Suk-yeol on Facebook in memory of the maritime clash between the two Koreas back in the year 1999. Praising the South Korean Navy's steadfast defense in the face of North Korean aggression 24 years ago, he further highlighted the service of soldiers in the country for freedom, peace and prosperity. South Korea defeated North Korea in a span of 14 minutes, with at least 30 North Korean fatalities and 10 vessels destroyed. 9 South Korean soldiers were injured, but none were killed. On the international diplomatic front, an olive branch of sorts appears to have been extended to Beijing by Washington. The Biden administration's top diplomat is scheduled to fly into China this Sunday for crucial talks. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken was set to visit China to hold talks with his Chinese counterpart in February this year, only for the trip to be called off last minute after a Chinese spy balloon was shot down over U.S. territory. 4 months later, the top U.S. diplomat is now set to visit China for talks with high-ranking officials in Beijing from June 18th to 19th. The upcoming visit comes as Washington looks to normalize communication channels amid ongoing tension between the two countries, which also includes 2 military-related incidents in recent weeks. According to U.S. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller, Washington has 3 main objectives during his visit. During the talks, Blinken will look to establish communication channels that are open and empowered to discuss important challenges, address misperceptions, and prevent miscalculation. The spokesperson added that Blinken will also raise a range of issues on both regional and global matters, while also exploring potential cooperation on transnational challenges in areas such as climate and global macroeconomic stability. While Washington does not believe this visit will result in any major breakthroughs, the main goal is to prevent any potential conflict. With the visit to Beijing, Blinken will be the first U.S. cabinet official to travel to China under the Biden administration and the first from any government since 2019. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Also on the international front, a basket of flowers and a letter were delivered to Chinese President Xi Jinping from North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to mark the former's 70th birthday. According to the state-run media up north, Kim's letter pays tribute to his Chinese counterpart's efforts to bolster China's national power and to build a prosperous society. Kim is also said to have shared his conviction that China's agenda will ultimately bear fruit, while voicing hopes for continued success amid the Chinese leader's ambitious plans. And Beijing appears to have confirmed North Korea's participation in the upcoming Asian Games in the Chinese city of Hangzhou. At a related press conference on Wednesday, the organizing committee revealed that all 45 national Olympic committees in Asia have signed up for the Games scheduled for September. While individual member countries were not mentioned by name, the belief is that North Korea has registered as it is part of the 45 Asian committees. A total of 56 stadiums have been set up and final inspections are reportedly underway. A growing number of puppies here in Korea are heading to kindergarten, as are their younger human counterparts, amid a tangible shift in pet culture and more. My colleague Kim Jong-un has this report.
Welcome to a kindergarten for dogs. From 9 a.m. till noon, all dogs of different shapes and sizes come in to spend another day. One of the largest kindergartens for dogs here in South Korea, this place offers various activities conducted by trainers and medical assistants from professional vets.
More than 130 dogs come to this kindergarten for daycare, exercise, and other activities. It might not be cheap, but customers say it's worth it.
Leia is my beloved daughter and my best friend who understands me better than anyone. We're very satisfied with the training she gets here in terms of socializing and etiquette.
The kindergarten principal said he has seen many changes in pet culture over the past few decades.
In the past, people used to buy puppies impulsively and abandon them if they didn't behave. But nowadays, more and more people adopt them as part of their family.
I consider my dog as a family member for life, so I want to give them the best possible care, just as I did to my children and my grandchildren if I have some in the future.
According to this year's Korea Companion Animal Report by KB Financial Group, 81.6% of owners said they consider their pets as family members. The report also said pet owners spend an average of $120 per month. That's more than $1,400 per year.
The overall cost of raising a pet has increased, starting with adoption, nurturing, and medical treatment. There's also huge room for funeral costs to grow in the future. All of this spending is due to the fact that many people deem pets as part of their family.
However, in South Korea, pets are still considered property according to the law. Experts said changes might be necessary as they are becoming a bigger part of many people's lives. Kim Jong-un, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Belarus, President Alexander Lukashenko on Wednesday said the country has begun accepting the delivery of Russian tactical nuclear weapons. The weapons are shorter range and less powerful than strategic nuclear weapons and could potentially be used on the battlefield. The delivery marks the first time since the fall of the Soviet Union that Russia has moved such weapons outside of its borders. They will be stored in Belarusian nuclear storage facilities. Russian President Vladimir Putin has justified the move, pointing at European countries that host U.S. nuclear weapons. Lukashenko also noted that Belarus would not hesitate to use the weapons if it experiences aggression. Russia, meanwhile, has maintained that it will retain control of the weapons. To Greece, where at least 79 people have died and hundreds more are missing after an overloaded boat carrying migrants capsized off the country's south coast. Over 100 others have been rescued. The boat was spotted on Tuesday in international waters. According to the local Coast Guard, the boat refused help, possibly due to fears over Greek practices pushing migrants back. A few hours later, it capsized. The boat was bound for Italy from Libya and was carrying mostly men in their 20s. Survivors say that most women and children who had been on the ship died. There had been further inside the boat at the time of the capsize. It's speculated that some 400 to more than 700 people were aboard the 20 to 30 meter long vessel. Now, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees on Wednesday said that a record 110 million people around the world have been forcibly displaced from their homes. According to the UN Refugee Agency, the war in Ukraine, conflict in Sudan, and refugees fleeing Afghanistan has pushed the number to a new high. 62.5 million were displaced within their own countries, while 35.3 million were refugees fleeing abroad. It's feared that the figure will increase further, as the agency's chief said that global emergencies had increased as much as fourfold in recent years. The number of displaced people was 108 million at the end of last year. Forcible displacement usually occurs as a result of persecution, conflict, or human rights violations. And finally, a letter penned by classical composer Mozart over drama in his love life could fetch between $300,000 and $600,000 US when it goes under the hammer in July in an auction hosted by Sotheby's in London. The two-page letter was written in the summer of 1782, when Mozart was 26 years old. It shows the Austrian composer asking a friend for advice over a misunderstanding he had with his future mother-in-law. Mozart was reportedly worried that she would send the police to take his fiancée away and ruin his reputation. Fortunately, the couple got married shortly after the letter was written. They stayed together until Mozart's death at the age of 35. While Mozart is known to have written many letters, it's rare to see them go to auction. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Well, I have been telling you the same weather information for the past few days, passing rain with thunderstorms, and it's another repeat for today. Scattered storms could bring hail to some parts of the country, and 5 to 60 millimeters of passing rains in the forecast, so you could get soaked once it starts to rain, so please keep a small umbrella handy. Temperatures should gradually warm up as we head into the weekend, and by Sunday, we'll be seeing sweltering highs of 32 degrees Celsius here in the capital. Well, back to today's forecast. After comfortable morning temperatures, highs are going up fast to the upper 20s in most regions, and when it does not rain, we'll be under partially sunny skies. Air quality will be decent nationwide, but the ozone level is rising during the day, and UV rays will be high to very high this afternoon. Tons of sunshine will be in effect for much of Korea from tomorrow. Meanwhile, Jeju Island will see rain early next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Well, those are the headlines at this hour, but as always, we have our panel session coming up next, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.